What's up, guys? On the Fly's back again. And tonight, I guess what you call this expert panel of music. A while back, we were having I don't know if it was the interview with Brian or Annie. And well, it had to be Annie because Brian was popping in. Jim was
Yeah.
popping in on the chat. We were talking back and forth on the music. And Jim's girlfriend, the great Nicole, from Brickshore Media pops in and said, "You guys should do just," and Annie too. You guys should just do a show. And so we decided tonight we're gonna do a show, and it's no top 10, nothing like that. It's just called Desert Island Albums. And with us tonight, making his second trip back to On the Fly. I don't know if he's got the one of a kind T-shirt on or not
I
tonight.
do.
He's got it on. The On the Fly T-shirt that I have no idea where it came from. Uh, but with us is Brian Meulen. How you doing, Brian?
Hey,
Yeah, hey, and making his On the Fly debut. And look at that. Me and Brian were talking about before we came on, the little things down here at the bottom. You see my handle at On the Fly and then at Brian Meulen Music. We were feeling kind of insufficient after he's got so much down there you can't even finish it. Author, producer, former radio DJ, and I don't know what else is there down there, Jim.
Music lover.
Music lover. Hey,
Yeah.
we could add that to our list, Brian. We can do
I
all
think
that.
I'm a little jealous of his suntan too.
I know. Look at that guy. Where are you
Well,
at?
I mean, I'm just outside of Nashville, so
Well, you can go outside if you're in the South right now, Brian. You can go outside for about 20 minutes and you can get a good tan because it's going to be brutal this weekend. I don't know how it's supposed to be in Nashville, but they're talking about 97 degrees this weekend in North Carolina. So
yeah,
get ready
it's
for that.
insane. People are fighting over the ice. You know,
Oh
the
yeah.
things when you go to the gas stations and the ice in there. Everybody's fighting to climb into those.
So this is Mr. Jim Law. So he's making his debut tonight, and you see Jim is in Nashville, and we just had that conversation, chatting back and forth, and like we said, Nicole and Annie came up with the idea. Well, I was all for it. I said I'm all for it. So tonight, Desert Island albums, and look, this list is, if all three of us go to a desert island, we're not going to have any room for anything else because it's going to be nothing but albums and stuff like that up there. We're not going to have room for food or anything like that. It's just albums. That's all we're going to do out there is listen to albums. But
We'll
before
die
we
in
get
3 days because we have no food.
Yeah.
No food.
before we get started on that, we have some sad news today in the music world. Legendary, would you call her a pop artist or would you call her just I don't know, would you call that pop? Sinead O'Connor?
Yeah,
I would guess that was Sinead.
I think back
Yeah.
then it was alternative, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't know what to call. Anyway, hey, Nicole's here. She's keeping an eye on us. Hold on. Hey guys, it's Nicole.
Hey, Nicole.
Okay. All right, so she's keeping an eye on us, making sure we're behaving, I guess. But unfortunately today, Sinead O'Connor, who had that big smash #1 hit, "Nothing Compares to You," which originally was a Prince song. Prince wrote it. It came out. I guess the Prince had a side group that he produced or something called The Family. And they did it in 85. It got no traction there. But when she did it, I think it was in 1990 or 91, it went to #1 in like 20 different countries, stayed on the Billboard charts for 4 weeks. Nothing Compares to You. I mean, it was a smash hit. And, I'm not sure. We're not sure the circumstances. We've been hearing some rumors. We're not going to get into that. You don't want to say anything till it's confirmed. But, yeah, she passed away at the age of 56. And such a shame that we're seeing, especially that young. I mean, it's one thing to see the guys and ladies that we grew up listening to. They're getting to an age now where it could be any day. Any of these guys are passing away. I mean, you look at my favorite band's Kiss. They're in their 70s wearing Gene Simmons is wearing 30 pounds of gear on stage every night, and I mean he's still doing it. So, but yeah, it's just a shame. Sinead O'Connor dead today at the age of 56. I mean, you guys, you're. I'm sure you're all at that age. You remember when Nothing Compares to You was big on the charts.
Oh,
And
yeah.
being a radio DJ, I'm sure you knew.
Oh yeah. Well, and I heard that song obviously when she released it, and many years later when I got started to gain an appreciation for Prince, he had actually released an album of all of the songs that he wrote for other people, and that's when I think I first learned that he wrote that song.
Yeah, he wrote Manic Monday for the Bengals. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know that. That was kind of strange, but
I knew I forgot. So I knew I forgot a band on my list today.
Prince.
Bengals.
Oh, okay. Okay, now we got the other one checking in with us and making sure we're behaving. Annie's in here,
boy.
making sure making sure that somebody doesn't get in the doghouse tonight too.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I did that last time.
yeah. Well, what did we do last time? What did we
I
do
did-
last time?
Favorite song, and I didn't pick one of hers.
Yeah. And I was trying to give you signals. I couldn't.
You were.
Yeah, I was
You
trying
gave
to
me
get
every
you out of
opportunity.
there, but anyway, so let's just get it started, guys. And Jim, you're the first timer here. We're gonna let you go first and name one of your albums, and we'll talk about it a little bit. If it's one that one of us has got on our list, just say so, and that way we'll go ahead and knock that one out. So go ahead,
Oh,
Jim.
so are there any rules or guidelines here? Because I was really
the only thing I can say, and I should have made this clear from the start. I think it would kind of be cheating if we said greatest hits, because I mean I could have said okay, like I said with Kiss, I could have said Kiss's box set, and it had all of that up there. But I think it would be kind of cheating if you said something like that, like a compilation like that.
yeah.
But if you got
And
one, if you got one, let me know.
I wondered, but I do have a couple on here because as I looked back at some of the albums for some of the artists, I was like, well, I really could listen to all of these, so I might as well put in the one album where I could listen to all of those.
That's fine. I didn't lay that out, so you go ahead and whichever one you want to do. The compilation will be fine this time.
So, I was really struggling because I cross so many genres as I'm looking at my list here that it's really difficult. And because I'm a mood music lover.
Right.
So I've got an album or an artist or a song that fits any mood. So some of these albums are also tied to a mood. But I'm going to come out with arguably an unpopular opinion, but it's a strong opinion of mine, and I have to say my first one on the list is going to be from Weird Al Yankovic.
Yes.
And I would say any of his albums, any of them. However, I'd probably have to go with In 3D, which was released in 1984. I could sing every single song on that album, start to end.
You are not going to believe me. But you had me at Weird Al, by the way. You are not going to believe me, but I just recorded an episode last week with Brad Rostoven, who I don't know if he's watching or not, but he did like the show. A Weird Al top 10. We just did that last week, and I am a huge Weird Al fan. And like you, in 3D, if I had to pick one, it was in 3D because that's where I started at. I got that probably, it came out in 84. That was a Christmas present in 1984. And I think I got it from my grandma. And I got my little Walkman, went to bed that night, put Weird Al in, listened to it. Of course, you had to wake up and flip the tape over. But I wore in 3D out. That was, in 3D. I have no problem with Weird Al, any of the stuff.
Well, and and I put that at the top of the list, even though there are albums on my list that precede that. that album in particular probably starts when I started deviating from the musical influences of my parents, who were very eclectic. I got a lot of rock from my dad. I got a lot of country and folk from my mom. And when Weird Al hit the scene, me being a creator, and I write parody songs myself, so
Oh, really?
I just completely fell in love with Weird Al. And in 1999, I think it was, I was at a radio station. I was the music director, production director, and marketing and promotions director. So I went up to the Count Basie Theater in New Jersey to meet with the executive director because we were planning a concert. And the chief of security took me through the building, took me into the green room, and he's like, "Wait here, I'll be back." And I'm down there, and he's like, "Hey, JC," which was my on-air name. He's like, "I want you to meet somebody."
Oh,
And I turn around, and Weird Al Yankovic is standing right there in front of me. My
gee.
jaw dropped. Now, I have met a lot of actors and artists and musicians over the years, but the first words out of my mouth when I met him was like, "I was in your fan club when I was 10." And he just got this little smirk on his face, and he was like, "Thank you." And I had no idea that he was there. He was filming his VH1 Behind the
Find the
Music
yeah.
that night. I was set up with front row tickets. I got to meet him. I got to stay for the whole show. And to this day, of all the shows I've ever been to, no one has been able to surpass Weird Al Yankovic as far as a show.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to see Pink in concert for the first time in September, and I have a feeling she
might surpass
may be able to elevate that bar a little bit.
Yeah. You'll never guess in a million years what I rank number one on my Weird Al
Okay.
top 10.
Kiss.
No, I'm talking about on my Weird Al top 10.
Oh, Weird Al. I thought you were going
I'm a
to the-
Star. I'm a Star Wars guy too now. So you got to know what it is then. After I give you that, it could be two after the Star Wars thing, but the saga begins.
Okay.
Brilliant. Anytime you can take American Pie and make it into the episode one, and doing that whole thing. I mean, I would love to pick his brain just to see how he does this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I could, I'd be okay switching out an album with you for a Weird Al album there. All right, Brian, let's hear one of yours.
Yeah, I've got to start right off the bat with my favorite band, and my criteria was I've got to be able to listen to all the songs on the album.
Yeah.
This one was no problem. Although we're going to be listening to this one on the island for a long time because it's full of 10-minute songs. And Justice for All.
Now, and Justice for All, I remember when that came out.
Heck yeah.
They had just come off Masters of Puppets, and they just come off the tragic death of bassist Cliff Burton. And you got Jason Newsted in there, which I will tell you, Jason Newsted was my all-time favorite Metallica member. Still is. I mean, he brought something different to them, like an energy on stage with when you saw him waving that head around, banging that head, and that hair flopping everywhere. What really ticks me off about that album, though, and I know what I'm going to say, Brian.
I know what you're going to say.
Turning the freaking bass down on that album and doing it on purpose. I mean, because Lars and them would come out and say, "Well, we never should have done that." Yeah, you never should have. Why you even want the guy there if you're going to turn his bass down?
Right, and it's not like he's a bad bassist. I mean,
No.
he was a great bassist before.
He was an accomplished player before then. I mean,
heck
yeah, but the craze that happened, because I remember, I mean, everybody remembers Headbangers Ball on MTV. I love that show. I never had cable here. I'd always go to my friend's house, 11 o'clock. They started a countdown. Then 12, they started Headbangers Ball. But Metallica had been adamant, we will never do a video. We will never do a video. And then all of a sudden, one comes out. And, boy, when they start with a video, they did it really well. I mean, to do that movie, I forget. Johnny Got His Gun, I think, was the name of the movie. They did the clips of it there. and it fits so well. I don't know if they wrote the song based on that movie or not. I've never heard, but it fits so well. And then to see them in there playing and the looks on their faces when they were playing, like Lars, say what you want about Lars, but gosh, that guy was pounding the drums on that one. But there's so many good songs on that album. And like you said, Harvester of Sorrow, Shortest Straw.
Black
yeah.
God, every one.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good songs on that album. I could definitely listen to Metallica with that.
And see, one was probably my favorite song off of that album. And when I saw the video for it, it just really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And then of course, one gets the shaft in the I don't know if it was the Grammy Awards or what for best hard rock song. And all of a sudden, I remember watching that night. I said, "This is a shoe-in. They've got this." They played right before they gave the award, and then they give it to some freaking Jethro Tull playing a flute. I'm like, "Come on, dude!" I have never listened to but one Jethro Tull song in my life, and it'll be a long time before I listen to another one. I think. I don't know. To all those Jethro Tull fans out there, more power to you, but just not my cup of tea.
Now, see, Brian, I do have a Metallica album on my list, so
okay. But
I could probably put more on my list, but I think being on a desert island, you got to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah. So this will be my first will be no surprise to anyone, being the huge Kiss fan that I am, and the one that started it all for me. It's probably, I guess, for nostalgia reason, and it's got all the songs except for a couple or songs that I don't skip. But Destroyer, I remember as a 5-year-old. Well, was I 5? Yeah. My older cousin had the album, showed me the cover, made me sit down, showed me the cover, and I'm just like wide-eyed looking at the cover because they're looking like superheroes. And then you hear the intro to Detroit Rock City with the car crash and all that stuff. And after that, I was hooked. I mean, the look got me there, but the music kept me for all these years. And this is going on 45 years now as a Kiss fan. But, God of Thunder, the eerie sounds that those kids are making in the background, Bob Ezrin's sons are saying stuff in the background. And he did a lot of different things on that. I mean, playing around with walkie-talkies, had Peter Criss playing in like an elevator or something. I think it was an elevator he was playing in to get a different sound. But so many different things on that album. And, ending with one of my favorite Kiss songs, Do You Love Me? And but yeah, definitely I had to have Destroyer first on my list.
I'm just shocked.
I mean, everybody out there right now.
Who?
Wow, you really shocked me. But I promise you, before this is over, you probably get a shock from me. All right, no, not shock me like Ace Frehley, but anyway, all right, Jim, let's hear another one from you.
All right, so we already covered Weird Al Yankovic, so I did the best I could to kind of order this list. And Brian, you touched on something previously when you said, "Hey, you got to love every song on the album," right? And that was one of the things as I kind of went back through and filtered this is, because historically, anytime I've ever bought an album, I've said, man, I got to like at least 4 or 5 of these songs if I'm going to spend money on it, because sometimes some of those tracks that never get released to the public end up being good songs. It's just that the record label doesn't see anything behind it. But one that I could just play over and over and over and over and over and over and over, even to this day, is Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood.
You stole one from me.
Well, I could go a step further and say that I also have the special edition that actually has the 3 or 4 previously unreleased original recordings of some of the songs, in addition to the ones that were actually released.
Right.
Yeah. Good album. I got to meet Vince that one time.
You told me about that.
Yeah, out in Leaper's Fork.
That album, because I became a Crue fan with Shout the Devil, but then every album was a drastic change for them. I mean, they went from the leather at Shout the Devil to Glam and Glitz on Theater of Pain, where they were wearing lace and purple, and then kind of went to the biker thing with Girls, 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 and then they would just strip down regular Motley Crue for Dr. Phil was sobered up, and man, I guess they were sobered up. They said they were, but that's pretty much a perfect Motley Crue album. I have to go along with you on that, Jim, because from the start to finish, there's no filler in there. There's every song is unskippable. I mean, don't go away mad, just go away. It's probably one of my favorites on that. Dr. Feelgood, of course, when that video came out, and that was the first single, and you see them like that, I'm like, holy crap. And but yeah, Dr. Feelgood, you stole one off my list there. So I'm like,
well, and I recall my my daughters were in the car with me one day, and my youngest one at the time, I think she had to have been 6 years old.
Uh-oh.
And I realized a little late in the track of She Goes Down that she was singing along with it, and I was like, oh. Well,
Okay.
I'm not going to hold out on this because I don't want her to really know what she's singing. It's cute, but no, I don't want her singing that song. And so I changed it. She's like, but Dad, I was jamming to that. And I said, good to know.
there's a story I tell, my mom and dad always supported my love for Kiss, at an early age. We always had the albums between me and my brother. But she would never let me listen to Rod Stewart. Do You Think I'm Sexy? But I was like, and the older I got, I realized, I was walking around the house. There's a song on Rock and Roll Over, and the opening line is, put your hand in my pocket, grab hold to my rocket. And I'm walking around the house singing that. And I said something to him not too long ago. I said, Mom, you realize there was the opening line to one of the Kiss songs that I was probably singing around the house and said, put your hand in my pocket, grab hold to my rocket. And she was like, what? And she said, Kiss was always all right to you. That Rod Stewart, he was just something else. I said, okay, whatever way. So, yeah, you stole one of mine, Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood. All right, Brian, you are.
So I'm gonna go with one now that I'm kind of thinking I might steal another one here from Stevie, but I got to do it, and it's one that would have really pissed my mom off back in the day. Appetite for Destruction. Guns N' Roses.
You stole that one from me too.
That's on my list. Okay.
It's such a great. I mean, every song on that album is just iconic.
Yeah, and it was different. I mean, they are bunched in there with those, those 80s groups like Motley Crue, Def Leppard, but that was different than anything Motley Crue or Def Leppard had ever done. I remember 9th grade bus trip to a baseball game, and this guy was a senior, and he starts playing Appetite starts playing Welcome to the Jungle, and I'm like, what the heck is this? And after that I had to have it, and probably what I would say with their best album, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 had a lot of build up and a lot of hype to it, but there's a lot of filler on both of those albums compared to this. I mean, it's hard to find a bad song on Appetite.
Yeah. Well, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, they had so many songs.
Oh, gosh.
I think the one that probably would have pissed my parents off the most was Mr. Brownstone.
We've been dancing. Yeah. I remember I was always in school. I was always the one that was trying to take care of everybody else when there was a little drinking going on. And there was one of my best friend came into our house, spent the night with us one night, and he had a few. And all of a sudden, he's down there watching, I don't know if it's Letterman or something. And the Letterman band starts playing Night Train, and he yells out in the middle of the night, I'm on a night train. And I'm like, oh my God, we're in trouble now. But luckily we didn't hear anything. But yeah.
And thank God we don't have Jim's daughter going around singing Night Train either.
I'm on a night
train. It's so easy.
Well, though, the funny thing about the Appetite for Destruction is that when my friends and family can convince me to do karaoke, Welcome to the Jungle is actually one of my go-to songs. Now my voice has actually dropped a couple of octaves, so I can't hit the really high note. So I like to say that I have to sing it in a lower key now because I can feel my testicles go up into my throat if I don't do it that way. But yeah, and and I remember when my dad bought the album in 1987, and I looked at him funny, and I was like, "Dad, what are you doing listening to Guns N' Roses?" But remind you, I got my 60s and 70s rock influences from my dad, so I remember doing a double take like that when he brought home some Quiet Riot records in the early 80s. So
Quiet Riot, yeah, I remember that. I remember when Metal Health came out. Yeah. All right, so I'll kind of, we've been doing some rockers and some Weird Al, so now I'm gonna kind of tone it down a little bit. And this is a group. This album, back in the day when I was like listening to Kiss and listening to Motley Crue and all this, if you mentioned this group's name, I was like, oh gosh, no, I can't listen to that. But I guess in the early '90s, when they did their reunion, got back together, I watched them do their concert, Hell Freezes Over, and I started gaining appreciation for them then. And all of a sudden, I listened to Hotel California, and from there, I'm like, there is not a bad song on here. And I mean, from the start of Hotel California, New Kid in Town, Try Love Again at the end, then The Last Resort. I mean, this album is like I said about Motley Crue, this is a perfect album to me. I don't, they do the reprise, the instrumental with Waste of Time, but and I mean that could have been left off, but I like it there. But yeah, Hotel California for me, from the trading guitar licks back and forth between Joe Walsh and Don Felder, when they trade guitar licks back and forth on that Hotel California, just there's no fatigue with Hotel California for me. And this album would definitely be one I'd have to take on a desert island.
Good album. Yeah, great album.
Yeah. All right. Jim, what's next? Jim's full of surprises too.
Yeah. I'm thinking, which one of these do I want to unveil next? I alluded to it before, so I'll just go ahead and do the reveal. I'm going to have to go with the Metallica, the Black Album.
Black Album.
Yeah, that, for a lot of the diehard Metallica fans, that was probably seen as a cop-out.
Yeah, sold out.
But I think what Bob Rock did for them, it introduced them to millions, tens of millions of fans that they probably didn't have before that. And that was actually the first album I bought when I got home from the Marine Corps, and I played it to death on cassette. And then I ended up buying a CD, wore that CD out, and then bought another CD. So,
yeah, that I remember all the talk after it came out. Oh, they sold out. They're going away from their roots. No, they adapted. And Bob Rock brought another level out of them. I mean, it was more, what you say, radio friendly with some of the songs, because they weren't those long, nothing wrong with those songs on And Justice for All, but they weren't those 10-minute long songs. They were radio friendly, from The Unforgiven to Enter Sandman to Nothing Else Matters. Matter of fact, me and Brian talked about it. I don't know if you've seen it or not, Jim. Have you seen the documentary series on Paramount Plus, I Want to Rock? It's a 3-part series on Paramount Plus, and it's really, really good. I mean, me and Brian, I finished that last episode today, Brian. I saw what you were talking about. I'm not going to give it away in case Jim wants to watch it. But
I'll watch it.
There was one part with Kip Winger talking about the downfall of 80s rock music and his downfall, which, between Beavis and Butthead, Stewart from Beavis and Butthead, and Nothing Else Matters, where Lars is throwing darts at his picture on the door, but which they say Lars has come out now and apologized for, but yeah. Nothing Else Matters was a great Metallica song to me.
I remember that a lot differently, though. I almost feel like Justice was, I know, Stevie, you always say Justice for All was like a big controversy when it came out. I feel like that was like really anticipated because everybody wanted to hear it after Cliff was gone.
Yeah, I don't think it was right after it came out. I think everybody, years later, everybody knew something wasn't right, and then people started talking, like with the internet, you start talking, well, they turned the bass down. You haven't noticed they turned the bass down that, so I didn't really notice that till years later. That changed my ear for music.
Yeah, but I remember Black being the big controversy. But
they sold out.
Yeah,
and even more after when they did Load, because they cut their hair. Everybody was saying, "Oh, they're really going corporate now. They cut their hair." What was that? Some guys, Jerry Cantrell, I think, was in the audience. No, Alice in Chains was doing Unplugged, and some of the guys from Metallica were in the audience and said, Jerry Cantrell wrote on the back of his guitar, "Good friends don't let good friends get bad haircuts," and showed it for them. Yeah, yeah, that was a big issue then. But Black Album was monumental. I mean, that's, like you said, hard to find a bad song with that album too.
Yeah.
All right, what you got next, Mr. Meulen?
I think I got to step away from the rock for a minute, which I could probably go on with that all day, but I'm going to go Mockingbird and Crow, Hardy. And we've talked about this before. Hardy, he's just such an amazing writer. There's a song on there called A Rock, and he just shifts the meaning of the word like 5 different times.
Yeah, he does.
Maybe even more. I mean, it's just amazing how he puts words together. And he might not be the best singer in the world. In fact, I've seen some clips where he's out of tune and all this stuff, but just the writing is just phenomenal.
And see, I've got to go back and listen to more, but I remember listening to The Rock because we talked about this last time we were together, and you're right. He shifts the meaning of that the word The Rock so many times. It's just brilliant the way he's wrote that song.
Yeah, and then another one of my favorites, 30-06 is a great one too.
All right, so get a little bit back into the rock side with this next one, and this is another one from the 80s, and this band, they like their classic stuff more, and the current stuff they do more than this 80s period. But I'll tell you this, without this 80s period of music they did, I probably wouldn't be that big a fan. I probably wouldn't have gone back and listened to any of the other stuff. And I'm talking about, and this is probably going to be a shocker for some people, Heart, Bad Animals. This album is, I remember getting it through that great Columbia Record and Tape Club, that I probably never paid for this album, but I got it. But from start to finish, there's some deep cuts in here that they do that are great. But the one that really kicks it for me is probably one of my top. It's probably in the top 10 of my favorite songs of all time. Is Alone. They kick major ass on that song when she starts off just with that slow thing, and then the guitar kicks in and the piano kicks in, and that lady has some pipes on her. Awesome. I think Alone never fatigues for me, but from the start to finish, like There's the Girl, Bad Animals, You Ain't So Tough, Easy Target, Who Will You Run To? Just a great album for me. And that's probably my favorite Heart album.
I think that album would surprise a lot of people. Like we've heard a lot of those songs on the radio, and probably a lot.
But you look at the hits. I think like there was 4 singles released: Alone, Who Will You Run To, There's a Girl, and I Want You So Bad. But the deep cuts on there are really good too. Because back in the day, it wasn't like it is these days for the kids. When you bought an album, you paid money for that. You paid like $8, $9, whatever it was. Or if it's a CD, you paid $12 or $13. You listened to that whole album. at least once. You listen to the entire thing. It wasn't just the hits, and that gave me an appreciation for this one, and probably got me some songs I wouldn't have known about. So yeah, Heart. Let's see, mark it off my list. All right, back to you, Jimbo.
Okay. So I'm torn. I might throw two of them at you because one of them is going to have an asterisk based on the excluding greatest hits. But if I were to include a greatest hits album, it would probably have to be Chicago Greatest Hits 1982 to 1989. The Cetera era, so to speak.
David
But
Foster.
yeah. But if we're not doing greatest hits albums, then I'm gonna change it up and I'm gonna say Pink's Hurts to Be Human album. She did a couple of great songs, and one of them was with Chris Stapleton on that album. Wow.
See, I haven't heard
this.
This is going on my list. This is
There's another song on there called 90 Days that is really powerful for me at that period of my life where, it's basically talking about a breakup and how, basically if it's over, it's over. But I'm going to need 90 days to get you out of my system because, a lot of people don't understand that the chemicals in your brain that cause you to bond when you're in love are the same chemicals that you go through withdrawal. So it was really poignant, that song. And there's a bunch of other songs on that album. So it's arguably one of her best albums, in my opinion.
I'm definitely going to put this one on my list because that 90 Day song that's intriguing to me right now. I want to listen to that. But as far as Chicago goes, Peter Cetera, you couldn't. I mean, back in that era, Peter Cetera could do no wrong. Even after he left Chicago, but Chicago 17 when that came out, I remember that. I'd heard what was the one? Hard for me to say. I'm sorry. I think that was on 16. But then when 17 came out and Hard Habit to Break, You're the Inspiration, Stay the Night. God, they were.
That's why I have to say. That's why I have to say the greatest hits 1982 to 1989 covers them all.
And I will say this: I don't remember the guy's name that took over for Cetera after he left, but he does a great job. I remember okay, how's this going to sound without Peter Cetera? What was the name of the song they did? The first single they come out after Cetera left. I can't remember. They did a great job on it. That guy.
Yeah, they were featured in a Karate Kid movie too with one of those songs after Cetera left.
And Cetera was in the, Cetera, really racked up on Glory of Love from Karate Kid 2. I mean, that was insane. But if you look at and I've tried to listen to some Chicago before, like 70s period. And there's some good songs there, but nothing for me beats the 82 to 89 era like you with David Foster producing. He got something different out of them. And I think some of the guys were kind of upset. Looking at a documentary, some of the guys were upset about David Foster, his direction that he was leading them into. I was like, how can you be too upset with him? He's making you millions of dollars on this. You guys do it better than you ever have. But David Foster, I just love David Foster. He's a genius as far as that goes.
The in addition to that 90 Days by Pink, the other song on that album with Chris Stapleton is called Love Me Anyways. Those two are probably my two favorite songs on that album, but that whole album is great.
I will definitely put that on my album list. So, next up for me, and I'm gonna be a little biased on this because this is going to be a hometown guy, and in a little town of 95 people. I
already know where you're going. This is on my list too.
Mr. Chris Daughtry with his self-titled album Daughtry. I mean, I will tell you this: when he went on Idol, Chris had moved away probably when he was early teenage years. We hadn't seen him. And then, I dropped my daughter off at my mom's house, and she said, "You need to watch American Idol tonight." And she was like, "Chris Daughtry is going to be on that." I'm like, "Chris Daughtry?" I said, "You mean the Chris Daughtry that used to live here?" She said, "Yeah," because his grandma and my mom were really close. And we saw him that night, and I was like, "Holy crap, where did this come from?" Then, of course, the crap, how in the world Taylor Hicks wins American Idol, but that was all sabotage voting.
Well, that was the era. I can't remember the name of the website and the app that existed,
Yes.
but there was chatter about during that season and a couple of seasons right around that period. They were always voting for the worst.
Yep.
And I remember from the moment I saw Daughtry audition, I was like, "That's my pony.
Yep.
He's who I'm picking to go all the way." He made it to number 4.
Yep.
And he's the most successful alum from that season. And when I voted off, I was like, the best thing he can do is form a band, call it Daughtry, and be done with it.
It was a couple of weeks after he got voted off. He came back to Alaska, did a concert here, and he I didn't get to talk to him that day. His brother had told me, said, that was he said that was probably the best thing that could have happened to him, because he would get to do his own music, what he wanted to do. If he was locked into that Idol contract, I had to play what they wanted him to play. But he had been offered a chance to be the lead singer for Fuel at the time. They had offered him that. But this album, when it came out, I remember it came out right before Thanksgiving that year that it came out, and I was like, no pun intended, I was blown away. When you hear it's not over, and that's the first line to it, I was blown away. What could I say? And then to hear Home, and he played that at the concert here. That was the first time I'd heard it at the concert here. And to dabble a little bit down the road off the second album, it's pretty cool when your town gets a song wrote about it. If you listen to September, that song is wrote. He told his dad, he said, "That's about Alaska. That's about the town that we grew up in." And it's pretty cool. But yeah, that album from start to finish, Over You, really, really good. It's Not Over. What About Now? Feels Like Tonight. He just had them coming left and right. Little sophomore jinx with that other album, but he did pretty good with that. But it's kind of getting back to his rock roots now. He kind of went in a different direction for a while, but now I don't know if you guys have listened to any of his latest stuff, but it's pretty good.
Have you heard his Separate Ways with Lizzie Hale? That is fantastic.
God, I love it. Have you heard that, Brian?
I have not. Is that from Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do a
cover.
That's on my list.
Chris Daughtry and Lizzie Hale released a cover of Separate Ways, Worlds Apart about 4 or 5 months ago, and it is even better than the original.
Oh my gosh, they kill it. They kill it, bud. You'll love it. All right. So back around, come around the corner of the gym.
Back around.
All right.
Did we do Brian? No, we skipped Brian.
I'm gonna do an honorable. I'm gonna do an honorable mention because again, it's a greatest hits album, because you can't pick just one, I don't think, but the Great Alabama, the For the Record album with 41 number one hits on it. It covers everything. And that was actually one of my influences. I was first introduced to Alabama in the 70s. My mother absolutely loved Alabama. So we had all those 8 tracks and whatnot that we were listening to all the time. So when that came out, I had to get it because it had everything on it. So that's an honorable mention. I'd have to say, I'm looking at the list here. A couple of them were stolen from me. What can I mention here? You know what? I'm just gonna go with my honorable mention,
Okay.
unless it's against the rules. I'll save
No, that's
my
fine.
next one for the
We
next
will
time
we
around.
will definitely have that. All right, Brian, I'm gonna give you two this time. We skipped over you last time somehow.
All right. That's all right. Yeah, that's okay. So, I think the reason this was so hard is because we just don't consume music this way. I was saying this before, we started, listen to Spotify and you pick the songs that you want. But I'm going to go back to two albums that, I actually did just buy when I was a kid and just played and played and played. One of them is Def Leppard, Hysteria.
Stolen.
Yeah, did I steal it? I'm sorry. I'm stealing all yours. But I mean, from the very first, Women to Armageddon, it just every song on that. I mean, just over and over again. And that's not the only Def Leppard. Like I feel like even now, I appreciate Def Leppard even more. Where I probably would have skipped some songs on Pyromania and High and Dry before. Man, I'll listen to all those now. I mean, they're so good and so they're relevant. I feel like even today. And the other one I'm going to go with, and it was because I was kind of trying to get into guitar back when I was in high school, and it didn't really go so well for me. But I just over and over again, I played Jimi Hendrix. Are You Experienced?
Okay. I'm writing down Hysteria, so I'm gonna bring that up again. But yeah, Def Leppard, Hysteria. Do you guys remember? I don't know if you guys were like me, but whenever if I went grocery shopping with my mom or anything like that, it was either Circus or Hit Parade or I was picking up, and every month, and I would read it cover to cover, and the build up to after Pyromania to Hysteria. I mean, for a long time, it seemed like every month they had a story on Def Leppard in there and talking about they're recording the new album, and then to have, Rick Allen had the accident where he got his arm taken off, the car accident, and you're wondering, okay, what are they going to do now? They're going to have to bring somebody in, and then he comes out and he hasn't missed a beat. I mean, this guy hasn't missed a beat, and that right there, I know people. There's a lot of the Leopard fans and rock fans that say Pyromania, but to me, this was like School Dance, Love Bites, Hysteria, Rocket, Women, uh, so many Animal, so many great songs. I mean, how many singles came off that album? And that
I don't know.
it is no telling. I bet it was at least 6.
2, 3, 4. Pour Some Sugar on Me for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hysteria. So 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Love and Affection even too.
Pour Some Sugar on Me became a stripper's best friend. I mean, that was every strip club was playing Pour Some Sugar over and over again.
What were you doing back then?
I don't know what you're talking about, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. I was too young to be in a strip club when Pour Some Sugar on Me come out. But yeah.
I've over the last couple of years, I've always the picture of the calendar with a pile of sugar on it at the start of May. Do the meme. Pour some sugar on me, and I feel like now I need to update that. Maybe have a picture of Brian May and a thing of sugar.
Got you. But yeah, that was that album, and to hear, if you watch some of the documentaries and hear them talking about it, Mutt Lange was in there originally and then left. They got some other guy and they were not happy with him at all. And then Mutt Lange comes back and the rest is history. I mean, everything Mutt Lange pretty much turned to gold or diamond, because he's got several diamond albums. All right. So you stole one there. Jimi Hendrix. I like Hendrix. I like Purple Haze and Voodoo Child, some of the other stuff. I remember the first time I think I heard Hendrix was, you remember everybody remembers We Are the World, but then the heavy metal guys did a tribute, like a album to raise money they called Hearing Aid, and I bought that cassette, and it had that was Can You Hear Me, I think was the name of the song that he put on there. But I remember hearing that for the first time. I was like, huh, okay, this is different. But all right, we're going to get away from the rock stuff for a while. Well, at least for my turn right now. And this album came out in '94, so it's not anything like Def Leppard or anything like that for it. But I remember watching this group on the album before. They went, they just took off, and everybody was looking forward. It was looking forward to this album, and they lead off with their single. Okay, man, Annie's. I'm gonna say I got something from Annie in a second, but this one was Boys to Men's second album, simply called Two. They start off with "I'll Make Love to You." That was a huge hit, and after "End of the Road" came out between Cooley High Harmony and Two, which "End of the Road" stayed on the top of the charts for 13 weeks, and I think it tied the record with Whitney Houston for "I Will Always Love You." But then on Bended Knee, Water Runs Dry, Thank You.
You stole one of mine off of my list. I had that on there.
Finally. But yeah.
Well, finally, you got me with Daughtry too.
Okay. So I got two from you. But yeah, these guys, Wanya Morris, who I think is incredible. And I can never remember this guy's name. Sean Stockman. Oh my gosh, all of them are incredible, but those two right there are the best for me. And I wore. You talk about wearing a tape out. I wore the Two tape out. I just went and bought the CD after that. But yeah, Boys and Men 2 is one of my albums there. I'm glad I stole two from you now.
Well, see, and I was looking because, like I said, I did rank these, but they're also kind of in an unranked order because I span from like 1966 to now. And I was like, man, it really just depends on the mood. So I'm going to skip down a few levels, not because it's less important, but because I also wanted to change it up from rock to represent the late 80s. And I have to say, I got to go with Eazy-E, Easy Does It.
Oh, my Lord. We wore that tape out. Gosh. When you hear, is it Dre saying, "Hey, Easy, come off the piano and rap for a while." And all you said, and then woke up quick at about noon. Yeah. Easy Does It. The late great Eazy-E.
Yeah. Well, and what the ironic thing is I remember one of the songs, me and a buddy of mine, we'd be driving down the street and we'd be cruising down the street in my 6'4". And the irony is that I now have a 6.4 liter Dodge Charger. So every time I think of that song, it makes me smile a little bit.
Do you start that thing up and crank up that song when you do it? Any? You ever done that?
Oh yeah. And I remember a buddy of mine also named Jim. We used to cruise around town in his Mazda RX-7, and we would have that album blaring out the windows. And that was really because like I said, at the beginning of the 80s, with my first choice that deviated from my parents' influences being Weird Al Yankovic, and then to end the 80s with having transitioned all the way through rock influences and then Eazy-E, who I latched on to from NWA before the rest of the world really knew who Dr. Dre and some of the others were, all of whom have gone on to huge careers. And so when my daughters, they got into what they call rap nowadays, and I said, no, I'm going to put together a list for you, and this is what we're going to listen to. So I introduced them to NWA, Dr. Dre, Tupac Shakur, Digital Underground,
all around the world.
Yeah, and they're like, oh yeah. So,
this is actually sounds like music.
Yeah,
not like that. This stuff today, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Here's what Annie had to say a while back.
Wait. Let me pick my album first.
Oh no. This was about.
Am I gonna get in trouble?
No, you're
Okay,
not in
good.
trouble. No, you know, wait a minute. No, this was about when we talked about Def Leppard a while ago. She said, "For your info, pour some sugar on me." Reminds me of the roller rink, and she's shaking my head, showing my age.
Yeah.
No, you're not in trouble yet, Brian.
No.
Like, wait a minute, let me
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot of roller rinks around anymore, but
no, we have one. We have one nearby, and I actually think that thing is that got turned into a church. So I think this is Nicole down here is laughing because you thought you were in trouble, Brian.
well, I haven't gotten to it yet, but that's my next. So
here we go. Of course, it's the next.
Before I get in trouble, I have to choose anything Annie Vander. She doesn't technically have an album out yet, but Falling in the Natural. Her new song, He, Himself, and Him, which was #1 stream song.
Big
Play
news for Annie. Congratulations to Annie.
Right?
Nice,
yes.
congratulations.
So looking for big things. You just remember the little people, Annie. When you make it big, when you're rubbing shoulders up there with Jason Aldean. Remember on the fly up here now. Remember that. All right, so I'll give you 2 on that.
All right, good.
That got you out of the doghouse.
Yes, I'm gonna go with this one. This one's a little tough because I can't say I love every song on this album, but I love this band, and I love a lot of the songs on this album. It's Mechanical Resonance by Tesla. So you got to do Modern Day Cowboy and Little Susie. Changes. Yeah, Getting Better. I just there's a lot of good songs on it. Maybe not every song is great, but I could listen to it over and over.
Yeah, that one. I have a Tesla one on my list that we'll talk about in a little bit, but that one didn't make it, but it was close. So where am I going to go next? Yeah, Nicole said, always have to show love to our clients. And Annie, of course, thank you guys. Your support means the world. Of course, we're gonna if it takes, we'll do whatever it takes to keep Brian out of the doghouse. Anytime. So where do I go here? All right. Okay. We haven't gone. Well, yes, we have. We've done one. This one was, and I think Brian will probably know. I think he's heard me tell this. Before this album came out, all through the 80s, I was anti-country music. I was like, no. And I could deal with some Alabama, but it was like, if you turn it to a country music channel, I was like, oh, good Lord. So this guy came out and everything changed. And I became a huge country music fan. And I'm talking about Garth Brooks, No Fences. From top to bottom, Friends in Low Places was, of course, we always listened to that when we were out doing something we weren't supposed to be doing. But, The Thunder Rolls, gosh, just a powerful song. And this pretty much started his ascension into legendary status. And no telling how many albums that Joker has sold. But Annie's telling on you a little bit here, Brian.
Oh boy.
Brian was anti-country until just a year ago.
Well, I was, and gosh, we could talk all day about how hair metal died, but a lot of people talk about grunge. Gosh, I think the first Garth Brooks sold more than 3 of the top artists on that list.
Yeah, they were talking about that on that documentary.
Yes.
Ricky Rackman said everybody thinks grunge killed 80s rock, but if you look at it, look at Garth Brooks. He sold 12 million copies of an album in 1 year, where he named 3 bands that didn't come. I can't think it got to 9 million between those 3 bands.
It was
Yeah,
it was
Garth,
90 million or something like that.
Yeah, Unanswered Prayers, which was great. I'm a sucker for a ballad, so I'm just looking over the same old story. But yeah, from number one at the Thunder Rolls to at number 10 at Wolves, it's just top to bottom. Five singles released. Wild Horses was one. I mean, it's probably one of the most influential country albums, especially at that time. But yeah, I figured I'd try to change it up and keep with Jim's Alabama for a little while.
Yeah, and Andy's telling on me because it was probably about 3 years ago that I was still listening to Hair Nation on XM Satellite, and that probably yes. There you go.
I busted him listening to it so many times till he caved and told me he started to like it. Oh, Annie is spilling secrets out here right now. All right, what you got next, Jim?
All right. I'm trying to think. I want to kind of continue with the little mix it up before I circle back to some of the other influences. You mentioned Boys to Men too. And I got to go with Cooley High Harmony in '91. Because it was just a great album, and those guys are so talented, and to see the music they can make, whether they have music behind them or not. I mean, even if they're just doing a cappella, I mean, yeah. So that one is one that I could probably listen to over and over again.
Yeah, it's so hard to say goodbye to. Yesterday was one that
I remember I was on the air at the time. I was working at a R&B station, and I had gotten a phone call that one of my great grandmothers had passed away, and I dedicated that song to her on the air as soon as I found that out. It was still one of my favorite songs to this day, and their 2 album also. I mean, it just carried the momentum forward. So I've always loved Boys to Men. I can't say that their later albums are as complete as those first 2, but they're still very, very talented, and I love listening to them.
I'm taking Brian's not a big Boys to Men fan like we are, because he's kind of quiet on here. So I'm going to ask you this, Jim. Mm-hmm. What do you think changed? I mean, I know all kinds of music goes through phases. Of course, you had the 80s rock, then you had grunge, but what do you think changed as far as that affected the popularity of Boys to Men?
I don't know. I think, music.
I've asked myself that several times.
I think music changes. I honestly think it has more to do with the decisions made at some of the labels than it does about the tastes from the public, because I've said this before, some of the most talented musicians that I have been blessed to have found or listened to don't get played on the radio,
right?
So yeah, there are occasionally music that I hear on the radio that I like, but hands down, most of the stuff that I find these days are talented musicians who can make me feel something.
Yeah.
And that's where my love of music comes from. So I really don't think the public shunned them. I think that as the music industry changed, everybody was going on to the next best thing, right? So they were the boy band. They were the boy band of the early 90s, which transitioned into the boy bands of the late 90s and early 2000s, which then led to the boy bands of the 2000s. And we can't forget, the boy bands from the 80s, NKOTB or the Jackson 5, the original boy bands,
Yeah, I remember New Kids when they came out. That album, and I don't know if you guys remember or not. I'm sure you do. You joined Columbia Record Tape Club. You got an album of the month. If you didn't send the thing back in, you got that album. And the New Kids album a cassette came to me, and I was like, "What is this?" But I will tell you this: I'm not ashamed to say it. The ballads they do, love them. Please Don't Go Girl. Now the Hanging Tough crap, okay, I can deal. I can deal without that. But yeah, the ballad. Like I said, I'm a sucker for a ballad, and I could deal with that. And it was, that was the '80s high school dances right there, bud. Right, I didn't
Yeah.
shy away from when "Please Don't Go Girl" come on to ask
Yeah.
somebody to dance. But yeah, so Boys and Men, Cooley High Harmony, and Annie is just chiming in. She had to show you some love. So, and then she
Love you
showed
too.
me some she's gonna pick on me because you've been on here twice before she has.
Oh
And,
boy. Oh
so
boy.
it looks like I'm in the Annie Vander doghouse for a little while, I guess.
It's somebody else this time.
All right. So who you got next, Brian?
So I'm gonna go a completely different direction, but I kind of agree with what Jim was saying. Like some of the best musicians don't get played on the radio. And I remember back when this band was kind of popular, they just didn't play metal on the radio that much. You had to go other places to consume metal. And guys like, Randy Rhoads and Cliff Burton and even Kip Winger, just amazing, musicians. And I guess maybe he's not metal, but Pantera, vulgar display of power. Songs like Walk, This Love, Effing Hostile.
I have
just
not,
stuff you could listen to when you're angry, just over and over.
Yeah, you would definitely have to be angry. I'll tell you, and Brian, about my list, my album list that I listen to complete albums, and that came up on my album list, and I was like, it's an acquired taste, and like I like Walk, but yeah, you definitely have to be pretty angry to be to listen to a lot of this Pantera. But yeah,
I was a pretty angry kid, so.
I can't believe that. You're such a laid back guy. It's hard to believe that. All right. So where do I go now? Okay. We talked about him a little bit earlier, and we talked about some. The dogs don't like it.
I know. It's something. I don't like something. Annie's rallying them up.
Annie's getting in trouble up there after you talked all that junk to me. You're getting in trouble. I got those dogs riled up now. We talked about him a little bit earlier, and we talked about a perfect album. And to me, this is one of those perfect albums. I remember buying this. This was a birthday present. The year I got this for my birthday, it was this cassette, the new edition self-titled cassette, and Kiss Animalized. I'm talking about Prince, Purple Rain, the Purple Rain soundtrack. I mean, from Let's Go Crazy to When Doves Cry to Baby I'm a Star. And you definitely didn't want your kids to be listening to Darling Nikki. But to tap it off, you've got Purple Rain. I mean, it's just a beautiful song. And then you watch the movie. The movie's not so great as a soundtrack, but I could go back and watch it over and over again. But yeah, Purple Rain, to end it with that ballad, it's just, to me, it's Prince's, I know a lot of people probably disagree with me. It's by far Prince's best album. But yeah, Purple Rain, that would be one I would be taking with me.
I'll be the first to admit that I was not a fan of Prince in the 80s. It wasn't until the late 90s when I got introduced to Prince by someone who absolutely loved Prince. And we'd go through each and every one of those albums and dissect. And that's when I came across the album where he did all of the songs that he had written for other people. I can now say that I am a Prince fan. I own all of the albums that I've been able to track down. And I do, in retrospect now, I do have an appreciation for the Purple Rain album. that I did not have when it was first released. Because, as is often the case back then, through the 80s and 90s, when the world is screaming, "Oh, I love this because it's so popular," that's usually when I look away and I go find
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah.
I try to find something obscure, which is why my list is so eclectic.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't always involved in the most popular thing when it was popular.
Yeah. This was, you had the whole Prince versus Michael Jackson back in this at this time.
Yeah.
Thriller versus Purple Rain. I was totally enthralled in the Michael Jackson Thriller thing, and I guess I meant to say that earlier. I guess that's what kind of drew me to the Weird Al in 3D when he did Eat It.
Yeah.
But Prince, you had just great stuff. I remember, and I've said this several times. Casey Kasem became like my best friend back in the day because you didn't have the Apple Music or anything. You listen to Casey Kasem on Sundays
Right.
and listen to the top 40 with your jam box sitting there, record on pause to get all your favorite songs. And Prince and Michael Jackson were all over that year. I mean, all over that. But yeah, Prince, like I said, I liked some of his stuff after that. You know, the Diamonds and Pearls and stuff like that. But nothing, like I said, nothing has touched Purple Rain in my eyes, at least in my opinion, since then.
I feel a little out of this one because I think if I remember right, I don't think my parents let me even watch Purple Rain, and they didn't let me listen to a lot of Prince. But I did go to the Prince Museum in Seattle. So if you guys ever get out there, to see the memorabilia and the stuff that they have in that museum is pretty awesome.
The people that are in charge of his estate are actually starting to put more stuff out. I know they came out with a live album a couple years ago from I guess it was from the Purple Rain tour, and he was weird at concert, but he would do some long versions of songs. I'm talking like 15, 16-minute long versions of songs. But Prince was great. I as far as going back and watching Purple Rain, the movie, just go into it with a open mind that Prince is not an actor.
Right.
Yeah, Prince is not. It's kind of like Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park. It's so bad, it's good. I mean,
yeah, but you know what? When I was a kid, I loved that movie.
Oh yeah, I did too. I mean, what was it? Are you gonna bathe yourself in the waters of what it was, that lake something? I can't remember what the lake was. When he told Apollonia that, I was like, what? This guy's weird. But yeah, he was a man though. He was definitely a man, and he didn't do bad for a guy that had no acting experience. But he didn't set the world on fire either.
Right.
All right, Jim, your turn.
All right, I'm gonna lean obscure because again, as I transition through the 80s and 90s, I've got this album from Leclerc featuring KO in my electronic pop dance phase. The name of the album was "Tonight Is the Night," which had the song "Tonight Is the Night" on there. But arguably my favorite dance song off that album was "Call Me," which I even made into a ringtone for myself for a period of time. But the whole album, front to back, was just dance music. 140 beats a minute, 120 plus beats a minute in every song. It was real good up tempo album from 1997. So
that's an obscure one. I'm gonna have to. When my time comes around, I'm gonna have to. It wasn't obscure, but it's gonna be a shocker to you guys. But Annie's all over the place. I guess she's got the dogs calmed down now. How have none of you said anything Lenny Kravitz yet? Love his stuff. Now, I love Lenny Kravitz, but I just don't have one that would be a desert island. It's not one that I had every song, on the album. He's got some great songs, but not
the one with American Woman on it is pretty good. And I can't remember the name of the album now, but again, I probably just not every song.
Yeah. It's not every one for me. All right, it's your turn, Brian.
I'm gonna go, back to the '90s and back to rock. Linkin Park, Meteora.
Oh yeah.
That's one I just remember, sitting in the car with my tape deck, and it might have been CD back then. I don't know, but Yeah, you just listen over and over.
Yeah, I never really got into Linkin Park. I've heard some of their songs. Of course, Chester. I remember the big thing I remember from them was when Chester came on and didn't he collaborate with Motley Crue and did a version of Home Sweet Home?
He might have.
I think he did, but I may be wrong there. But
he was on CNBC before he passed too. He was involved in some investment stuff.
And I'm really getting in Annie's doghouse now. Yeah, I want you to know that because she is. When I said that about the Lenny Kravitz, she's and all good. So I'm
okay.
let me see if while we're sitting here, yeah, he did a version of Home Sweet Home with Motley Crue. So I don't remember listening to it that much, but gosh, one of the all-time best power ballads out there. Everybody talks about. I think I was listening to a podcast the other night where somebody was talking about an album that it probably outsold Theater of Pain, but then another guy brought up, you got to remember Home Sweet Home was on that album, and Theater of Pain had outsold it by at least 2 million, and that was probably just because of Home Sweet Home.
Well, mentioning LinkedIn or Linkin Park, not LinkedIn. It made me think of Fort Minor, and I can't believe I forgot to include Fort Minor's The Rising Tide album, which had Remember the Name, Where'd You Go, stuff like that. So
Fort Minor. See, I've never listened to that.
Yeah, I've not listened to that either.
I'm gonna have to check them out.
Yeah, Fort Minor is the offshoot of Linkin Park.
Okay.
So Mike, what's his name? The guy that does the rapping for Linkin Park. He's the front man for Fort Minor.
Okay, I have to check them out. All right, this is where I'm going to shock you guys. This is one that,
unless it turns up on my list deep in the trenches.
If it does, I will be shocked. I'll put it this way. Because I always ask all the guests on my show, what's your guilty pleasure? What's one that somebody would be shocked that you listen to? And I mean, there's nothing wrong with listening to, I say it's a guilty pleasure, but there's really nothing wrong with listening to every kind of music because, I
might have one of those on here.
I get tired of people saying, and I was just as guilty of it back in the day, with my dislike for country music when I was listening to 80s. I was like, yeah, well, you can't listen to 80s rock if you're listening to country music, and vice versa. You can't listen to pop if you're listening to 80s rock. That's, of course, I got my head straight now. And even back in the day, I may have been in the closet with this one, but I was listening to this, and man, was I crushing on this lady right here. And this album came out in 1989. And I mean,
it's going to be Paula Abdul, isn't it?
No.
Lita Ford.
No, that wouldn't shock you, the fact that I would be listening to Lita Ford. I'm looking over here at it right now on my shelf. I'm
trying to guess who came out in 1989. Taylor Dane.
It's a 3-disc with a DVD on it too. You'll never guess. I guarantee, Jim, you'll never guess. It's nobody in 80s rock. Brian knows. I think I told Brian.
I think I know. I'm pretty sure I know.
All right.
Do the reveal.
This album, get ready. Electric Youth by Debbie Gibson.
Yes.
Is that the one that had Only in My Dreams on it?
No, this was the one that was her debut. That was this one was the one that had Lost in Your Eyes.
Okay. I'm right there with you. I mean, Debbie Gibson. That I used to listen to the song Only in My Dreams on repeat over and over and over.
But I'll tell you this. I love this. I bought the CD as a kid. I kind of snuck it, I guess, into with some other like rock CDs I had when I bought it. But later on in life, it's funny. My daughter, she's 19 now, but she was like 3 years old, and I had an old Debbie Gibson VHS that I'd actually got for Christmas one year. It was Live Around the World. It had her on tour playing, and then it had the videos for all the singles from Electric Youth. My daughter watched it non-stop, and there's video on YouTube of my daughter at like 3 years old saying, singing "Lost in Your Eyes" and what was the other one? "No More Rhyme." And a while back, I reached out. Well, several times I've reached out to Debbie Gibson's publicist about an interview, which, I know I'm grasping at straws, but what's the worst they could say is no. And I actually got a response back this last time. She is swamped right now. We'll come back around to you, which was like great. I was like, okay. And I said, I've got to share this with you, before, and if you want to share it with her, that's fine. So I sent her the YouTube link of that, and she was like, oh my God, this is precious. I mean, and it was just funny how, you put that on your kids, and she took right to Debbie Gibson. She loved her, still to this day loves her. But yeah, nice. I figured I'd shock the people there with a little Debbie Gibson, Electric Youth. But man, did I crush hard on her back in the day. She was.
I think we all did.
And she is still smoking. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Annie.
Yeah. Sorry, Annie. I'll probably get into the doghouse again for that. But anyway, she did say I wasn't in the doghouse yet. So
good.
After that, I may be. All right. So it's Jim's turn now.
Yeah. So I'm going to climb back. I'm going to climb into the Wayback Machine for this one. And we're going to go all the way back more than 50 years for this one. And this is going to kind of go back to Annie and her love of the song American Woman, but from the band who did it originally on the album of the same title. No Desert Island album list is complete without the Guess Who's American Woman from 1970. Featuring American Woman, No Time, No Sugar Tonight. They had two albums the year before that were equally as good, Canned Wheat and Wheatfield Soul. But American Woman, probably of those three, is the one that I think of first.
Right. Now, is this something your dad was an influence on you with this?
Oh, yeah. My dad was a huge influence. I mean, we'd listen to the Guess Who all the time. So a lot of my influences that predate that Weird Al demarcation point in my music choice came from my dad. But in retrospect now, when I go back and I listen to those songs, not only do I have the fond memories of those, but I also have an appreciation for that, particularly the lead singer of that band. I mean, his grainy voice, the power behind that voice, it's very distinct. Love everything that they did.
They're still touring, right?
Yeah.
Yes. You know who was the drummer recently?
No.
Troy Lucetta.
Yeah. Yep. And actually, I was talking to Annie's producer not too long ago. I think they actually asked him to go out on tour with them.
How can look, Troy is a great drummer. He always has been.
For sure.
It's just a shame. Like I said last time, I'd love to see all the originals from Tesla get back together one more time. So, all right, Brian, who you got, bud?
Should we go for a guilty pleasure, or what do you think?
Oh, yeah, I'm down for a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I think if we're going to go guilty pleasure, I would have to go with a newer album by Lainey Wilson. I mentioned this before. Lainey Wilson probably is my guilty pleasure on your
the last when we had you on before.
Yeah, but gosh, there's so many hits on this album already. Heart Like a Truck, Watermelon Moonshine, Grease. She did. I will tell you this. I've heard the Grease song when I take my daughter to lunch.
every time we hear it, at least one time I hear the grease come on. Now you're cooking with grease. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like she's
got
bringing,
it. She's got a distinct voice.
She
I mean,
does.
that's the thing with her. Her voice is distinct. My mom always said there was, and my mom doesn't listen to much music anymore, but my mom was a huge Elvis fan. And she said there's two distinct voices I remember and that will always stick out with me. And that's Elvis Presley and Chris Daughtry. I was like, well, you're being a little bit biased because Chris is from Alaska. But, I see what she's saying, but that distinct voice, like Lainey Wilson, she sticks out, and she's going to be big. If she isn't already big, she's going to be big, I believe.
Yeah, she's amazing. I feel like she's kind of bringing back the old country.
I do too.
I really like that.
Okay. So you mentioned this band a little bit earlier, Brian, and you got them hanging behind the wall back there. But I went a little bit different. Tesla, great radio controversy.
Finally got one stolen.
So, I've told this story on here several times. I was a Tesla fan already from Mechanical Resonance. And a friend of mine had asked me, said, look, my mom's taking me to see Poison. Do you want to go? We were both big Poison. I said, yeah. I said, so we got tickets. We had 4 or 5 of us. We went. And Tesla was opening up for them. And this was on the Great Radio Controversy Tour. This is before Love Song had been released as a single. And Love Song gets played, and I'm like, holy crap. Like I said, I'm a sucker for a ballad. But I was like, holy crap, this is going to be huge. And it was. I mean, this is probably, people will say what they want to, but that's probably, unless you're a diehard Tesla fan, when people get asked, what's the song you remember Tesla for? They're probably going to say Love Song because it was one of their biggest hits. It ends that documentary. It's near the end of that documentary with that, which I thought was great.
I wasn't going to give it away.
The video is awesome. But then you look at these other ones. I mean, Lady Luck is a deep cut that I love. Lady Luck. Heaven's Trail, No Way Out. Lazy Days, Crazy Night. Making Magic, The Way It Is. Paradise is right there with Love Song for me. I mean, Paradise, when they do the 5-man acoustical jam and do that version of Paradise, Jeff Keith is, and you talk about a distinctive voice.
Distinct voice, man. He just
another distinctive voice right there. But yeah, I would definitely say, if you're bringing Mechanical Resonance, I'm bringing Great Radio Controversy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just doing open mics and stuff like that around town. I love Tesla. I have such a hard time covering their music. I really do. With Jeff, you can't just replicate Jeff Keith's voice. It's just another level.
Definitely not. I mean, there's nobody that can sound like that.
Yeah, and I've heard stories that he's playing down a half step or a full step now these days. But I don't know who could sustain that kind of.
He's been singing for almost for 40 years now. See, that's what kills me about these guys. And I know there's a time and a place that you need to hang it up. These people that are complaining about it are the same people that, why don't they go out on the road anymore? Why don't they go out on the road? Well, when people get out there and they're giving it everything they've got, and you're bad talking about it, of course, like Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley.
When to stop, right? When people stop buying tickets.
Exactly. Paul Stanley's been singing for 50 years. You think you could sing all those times for over 50 years and your voice sounds the same? No. So give it a rest, guys. If you don't want to listen to it, don't listen to it. You don't want to go to the show, don't go to the show. Just give these guys a break. All right. Now that I got off my rant for a little while. What you got next, Jim?
All right. I'm going to have to fast forward to my guilty pleasure, which is a shocker based on most of the stuff that I'm talking about tonight. And that is going to be Taylor Swift's 1989 album from 2014. I can listen to that over and over and over.
Hey, there is nothing wrong with Taylor Swift. I have one of my football players, believe it or not. He is a huge Taylor Swift fan. He lives right around the corner from me, and what was it that came out just a couple weeks ago? Her new album with her version of that album, and it came out. He stayed up. He was up at 12 o'clock that night when it came out, so he could listen to it. I was like, it'll still be there tomorrow morning when you wake up, dude. But I mean, I would have done it back in the day like that. But yeah, Taylor Swift, she's definitely a talented, and I would not. You talking about being in the doghouse, Brian? I hope Annie never goes Swifty in writing her lyrics, because you might be in trouble, big boy. You better be on your best behavior. But yeah, I can't. I haven't listened to all her albums, like the self-titled album when she first came out. She did the whole Tim McGraw thing, but she's definitely made the transition from country to just a pop artist, and she does a good job with it. I have to take my hat off to her. I'm not a Taylor Swift hater at all.
No, I know a lot of people in Nashville don't really, some people, kind of say things about how she became famous or whatever, but you can't discount how good of a writer she is. Number one.
Oh yeah,
just amazing talent.
I mean,
I kind of classify her now because one of the other things that I love about her are her battles against the machine that benefit all other artists. Yeah. Her and Prince are in perfect alignment in that space, and I love that aspect. But her connections with her fans is something else that's amazing.
Yeah, she's going to go into history books as being one of the most brilliant marketing minds.
Exactly. And I think Nicole's talking about that right now too. Such a great business.
There you go. Yeah.
But if I had to compare her, I mean, and we talked about this girl, Debbie Gibson was writing her own music at like 13 or 14. Same thing with Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift was writing her own stuff. The fact that she could write all these songs, whether it be about a bad relationship or whatever, the fact that she can put together all these songs is mind blowing to me. She does a great job with it. But nothing wrong with Taylor Swift there. I like it. All right, Brian.
Oh man, we're getting deep, and I do want to say one more thing, because Anne, while she's not really a Swiftie, her cover songs tend to get a little stabby. She knows what I mean by that. Like somebody dies in every one of them, in one of her cover songs. I don't know what it is, but
so if I hear her sing "Goodbye Earl" sometime in the future,
that Brian,
then that falls under the stabby category.
Martha Devine, another favorite.
Just as long as she doesn't change Earl to Brian, we're okay.
Right? Yes. I'm gonna go. So I do have a few more, but I'm gonna go a little bit off the wall on this one, because it's not something that I listened to most of my life, but recently I've kind of realized how good it is, and it's Fleetwood Mac. Rumors.
Yes.
Like every song, it's just one of those albums you turn it on, it's like, God, I've been hearing that song, daily for 20 years.
my daughter, that was when she wanted she started getting into vinyl, and that was one of the albums she wanted was Rumors, and she'll play Fleetwood Mac in the car. She kills me though, because I'll tell you this, one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs of all times is Silver Springs. And I'm not talking about the studio version. I'm talking about the concert version that he played. I mean, it's so powerful, because you watch near the end, Stevie Nicks, the eyes, the daggers she's throwing at Lindsey Buckingham when she's singing. Oh my gosh. And I'll tell you this, people can talk about it all you want to. Lindsey Buckingham, hell of a guitar player. That solo he plays on there, I mean,
yeah.
And of course, a lot of other songs too, but the solo he plays on there, because my daughter has not downloaded the live version on her phone. She plays the studio version. I'm like, okay, that's good, but gosh, please get the live version if you can play it next time.
Yeah, and I think that that new TV show might bring a little.
Oh yeah,
new,
yeah.
like Daisy something in the 4. Yeah.
Daisy something in the 6 or something
And
like
the
that. It's
6.
supposed to be loosely based on Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
I've got to watch that. We were talking. Matter of fact, we were talking about that the other night. That was something we need to check out. So yeah, nothing. That's another one that, like I was talking about the Eagles earlier. That's another one that Fleetwood Mac I wouldn't listen to back in the day because that was just not in my wheelhouse, and
Right.
I wasn't allowed to go outside my wheelhouse except for Debbie Gibson. But that's some that I've come to appreciate more as I've gotten older with Fleetwood Mac. How great they are, and
For sure.
All right, let's see here. Do I want to get back to a rockin' or do I want to go something different? I think I'll go back with the rockin'. And this is going to be, you talking about kind of obscure, but a great album. Came out in the 80, I think it was 87 came out. And I'm talking about former member of Kiss, Vinnie Vincent Invasion, All Systems Go. Half of this band goes on to be Slaughter with Mark Slaughter and Dana Strum. But, back in the day, I was such a big Kiss fan that, anytime somebody from that Kiss family put an album out, I was going to try to get it. And I did not get the debut Vinnie Vincent Invasion. I got it later on, and I do not. A lot of people love it. I don't care for it. But this one right here with Mark Slaughter, one of the best voices in 80s rock at the time, and does a ballad that was on the one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies called Love Kills, which was a great ballad, but an even better song that nobody knows about probably, that if Bon Jovi, Def Leppard would have took this song, it would have been a smash hit. It's one called That Time of Year. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. I promise you will love it. It's kind of it's not really what you would call a ballad, but it's not an up tempo either. But That Time of Year, they do a great song to kick off the album called Ashes to Ashes that would open any rock concert back in the day and just get the crowd into it. But yeah, and as bad as Vinny is at making decisions with his band, this was probably the worst decision he ever made was to get out of this band. I mean, they were catching traction. And if they'd have done another album with stuff like this on it, I think they would have been big because it was not right before grunge came out. But, and what I hear too, Slaughter and Strum and Bobby Rock were ready to get away from Vinny because he was just strange. That's been documented over the years too. But yeah, All Systems Go. If you haven't checked that album out and you're a fan of that kind of music, I promise you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, I'll check that out too because I know for sure Mark Slaughter later.
Yes, this was
my favorite songs. Fly to the
I
Angel.
stuck with him after that.
Yeah, I couldn't put that album on there. I just don't like everything on that album. But
yeah, I couldn't put a Slaughter album on there because the debut Slaughter album, there's a lot I like on there, but not everyone. And then I actually like the Wildlife better than the debut, but it still wasn't a, desert island for me. So,
yeah. Well, Fly to the Angels, I think, was on Stick It To You.
Yeah, Fly to the Angels was on the debut.
That's just my favorite song. I love that song.
There's a great song on the second album called Real Love. And I don't know if you remember the video. Video had Shannon Doherty on it. And yeah, she was pretty hot back then. But all right, Jim.
All right, I'm going to pull another guilty pleasure out of my pocket before I go back to some of my roots. And that guilty pleasure is going to be NSYNC's No Strings Attached from 2000.
It's going to be me. Hey, I love that. I bought that CD.
Yeah, I have that CD.
Actually, what got me to buy it, this was after we were married. And we were sitting there it was a Saturday afternoon. You remember I think MTV used to do the documentary of making the video, and they showed them making the video for gosh, what was the name of the one where they were the puppets? Gosh,
It might be No Strings Attached.
that it was from that album, but it was
Right. Yeah, I'm looking for the. Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on it. I know it wasn't. It's Gonna Be Me. And Brian's like, "What are y'all talking about?"
Yeah, it might be No Strings Attached. That's a song because I don't think it was Bye Bye Bye.
It was. It's Gonna Be Me. It was. It's Gonna Be. Bye 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 was the
Okay.
one
It's Gonna Be
did,
Me. Yeah.
They did the other video for it. It was Gonna Be Me. But yeah, that made me. I kept listening to it. I was like, that's as bad as I want to say. I was like, this is kind of good. So went out, bought the CD. Great album. And then I went back and bought the first one. But yeah, no problem with no. What was it? There was one song that my daughter used to listen to all the time on No Strings Attached. No, it was a celebrity that she listened to. Some
Well,
good
see, when they were touring, there were a couple of young ladies that used to call into my radio show, and they were huge fans of NSYNC, and they were going to go up and see them at Madison Square Garden. And they were in the little VIP room, and since they loved listening to JC on the air, they had JC Chazé call me. And
wow.
I did a quick impromptu interview with him while they were waiting to go on stage at Madison Square Garden. So that's
pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And then, of course, Justin Timberlake gets bigger than NSYNC, and that was the end of NSYNC.
Yeah.
My daughter, what's the guy's name? Joey Fat One? I was like, no, it's
Joey Fatone.
Yeah, because it was spelled Fat One though.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, him and Lance Bass were in a movie called On the Line that was actually a pretty great rom-com that featured Lance Bass and Emmanuel Shrieky. And it's a really good movie from the early 2000s.
Okay. Brian's like, let me get away from this NSYNC stuff.
No, you don't. So, I mean, we hang out in that Leaper's Fork all the time, and I know Justin Timberlake's mom still lives. I think he bought her quite a lot of land out there.
Oh, really?
And the first time we stayed out there, we were going to stay in one of his friends' Airbnbs, and they advertised it as, one of those places where they kind of, go to create. But and one of Ann's friends is actually friends with his mom. And I know that there's a story that runs around out there about how he hired Chris Stapleton for a party or something, and that's how that whole thing happened.
He seems like he would be a cool guy to hang out with. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know people put a lot of different things when they're in front of a camera, but it looks like he would be a fun guy to hang out with.
Yeah, you just gotta watch out for any Christmas presents that he might give you.
I will not be opening any Christmas present he's holding.
Because you never know what you might get in that box.
Or Andy Samberg either. I know exactly what you're talking about there, bud. All right, what you got, Brian?
I got to go back to some 80s, 90s rock. This just reminds me of, spending time as a teenager, probably right before I got my driver's license, kind of doing stunts out in the cul-de-sac in front of my parents' house in the south side of Chicago. Van Halen, 5150, one of my favorite songs on there, Summer Nights. Just everything else on that album. That was another. We just wore that album out.
Everybody wanted to hear that just to see what Van Halen sounded like without David Lee Roth, and I was one of them. I bought it as soon as it came out. But I'll tell you this, you've got the Dreams, you got Love Walks In, what was the other one? Best of Both Worlds.
But I'll
tell you, probably competing for my favorite song on that album is 5150. That is a killer song. I remember hearing it, and I hadn't listened to it for a while, and then probably about a year ago I started listening to it again. I think we were doing a Van Halen episode, and I was like, I forgot how good 5150 was. The song and the album. This has got to be right up there with one of Van Halen's top, right there. But
and I'm kind of kicking myself too, because I had the stunt bike that I rode back then. Because I probably just bought it and it was beautiful. And I sold it maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And I can't believe how much money some of those things are worth.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing. It was a GT Pro Performer. But I remember vividly listening to Summer Nights, rocking all the stunts on my GT Pro Performer.
Summer Night. I remember that song. All right. So I'm going to go a little different this time, too. 80s rock's over, grunge is in. I'm not really into grunge, but this album comes out in 1994, and these guys take the world by storm. And I remember going to I forgot where we were at, but I was hanging out with some friends of mine on the weekend. They were at college. And they were like, we're going to this country club and we're going to see this band, everybody's talking about. This was before they hit it big. And I was like, what's the band's name? And they were like, Hootie and the Blowfish. And I'm like, what the hell is a Hootie and the Blowfish? And yeah, they were pretty cool. But Crack Rear View, man, from Hold My Hand to Only Want to Be With You, which I think is just a great song, but the best song up there, and the one I really, you talk about feeling a song and relate to a song, but when you feel it, you feel this guy singing Let Her Cry. I mean, you can tell that song, he's feeling every bit of that. That's something, I don't know, it doesn't show if he wrote this or not to me. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, he wrote, Darius Rucker was one of the writers here. But yeah, just incredible. And watching the video makes it even that much better. Rucker said that he had just listened to the song She Talks to Angels, which I definitely hear that in the Black Crow song for the first time. And listen to Bonnie Raitt. And in one stream of consciousness, he wrote the lyrics to Let Her Cry. But yeah, you could definitely feel that emotion in that song. And it, you got Time on there. Only Want to Be With You, like we talked about earlier. But Crack Rear View, that's definitely, that had to be on my list as a Desert Island album. All right.
Nice.
Jim.
All right. I've got an artist. I got 2 albums on the list, but I'm going to go with the one that I've listened to the most as my desert album island, even though there's another one that I think gets an honorable mention when you mention their name. It's Bon Jovi. And the album that I choose is not Slippery When Wet.
Hold on now. Hold on. If you go in this direction, then me and you are like right there then, bud. If you go in the direction I hope you're going in.
Well, I don't know, because I'll be curious to hear your album, but I prefer the Crossroad album.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it does include some of the songs from their other albums and introduces a couple of new songs and some reimaginings of some previous songs. So I had to go with Crossroad because I listened to it over and over and over. And the song Always in particular is such a fantastic song. And then, you've got the classics like Living on a Prayer. And then the, Blaze of Glory, Bad Medicine, I'll Be There for You, one of my favorites. And then Bed of Roses is another favorite of mine. So always, I say when I do karaoke that Welcome to the Jungle is often my go-to, but on occasion when I could get into that upper register in the day. Always and Bed of Roses were two other ones that I could hit, because when I could hit those high notes, um, much like the high notes that I could hit when I was doing some Steel Dragon songs,
Oh wow.
it just got to a point when my testicles were trying to compete for space with my eyeballs, and I was like, yeah, I can't be singing songs with notes that high anymore.
So I thought for a minute there when you
Yeah,
said it's not Slippery,
yeah.
I thought because the album that I got introduced to Bon Jovi with was the album before Slippery, was 7800 Fahrenheit. And
Mhm.
to say that, that's an underrated album for me, in my opinion. And John just doesn't want to acknowledge it at all. I mean, he talks about the production was so crappy on it, which I don't think it was, but
Well, In and Out of Love from
yeah,
that album is actually on the Crossroad
yeah,
album. So, and to see, he's such I think, a perfectionist in
yeah,
some regard, but you can't deny that some of the decisions that they made from their first album to 7800 to Slippery When Wet, and then you were talking about before with Boys to Men and what happened.
yeah,
These bands or these groups, and they're still out there performing, and it's not that they don't have a fan base, it's just that you don't ever hear them on like terrestrial radio anymore.
yeah.
But yeah, it was very different. And Slippery When Wet in 1986, I remember how Living on a Prayer
You give
kept
love a bad
bouncing
name.
between the number one and
Oh
number
yeah,
two spot on MTV's top video of the day. It was a fight between them and the Beastie Boys.
fight for your right.
Fight for your right. So yeah.
Uh, just looking at some of the songs on 7800 though, like you said, In and Out Love, Only Lonely. That was the video was a freaking mini movie that when I saw it, I was like, okay, I got to see what happened here. What's going on with the rest of this? And then you have Silent Night and Tokyo Road, which occasionally they'll come back to some of those songs, very infrequently though. Um, but I'll tell you this, and I realize, you know, you get to a certain age with these guys and they can't write songs like they did back in the day about partying and all this stuff. But the last Bon Jovi album, the 2021 or 20, whatever it was god awful. It depressed me to no end because when I'm sitting here, you don't have to write about partying and all this stuff. But when I listen to a Bon Jovi album, I want to hear something that's going to bring me up. Not, I mean, every one of those songs on that album was something depressing. And I was like, dude, I, I can't. I finished it, but I was like, oh, I can't. I won't. That will be one I never listen to again. And hopefully, all the rumors out there about Richie coming back, which he says he hadn't even been contacted. If they do get back together and do another album, I think they said they're doing another album with or without Richie. I hope it's a little bit more upbeat this time.
Well, and it kind of makes me wonder when you start getting into some of these bands that have been around for decades, right? One of the questions that I always ask myself is, why do some bands successfully transition into a new decade and others essentially are kicking the can, right? When you look at Aerosmith and their longevity from 1970 to the 2000s, I mean, those guys are still kicking.
Yeah.
And then, Bon Jovi, they've had some ups and downs. Metallica experienced it too, early 80s, the 90s, some of the 2000s stuff. It's just something that has always fascinated me about how the bands that transition just do it with flair, and the ones that don't, I think, are just overthinking it. They're like, oh, we've got to change our sound. But do
Yeah.
you? Or
No.
do you just take your style and just
Uh,
bring it forward,
but Bon Jovi and Aerosmith were two of the rare bands that made it it had hits through all the 90s when grunge was around too. Because Bon Jovi, up until, gosh, I can't think of the album that they kind of started dropping off with. But they did "It's My Life." I think that was in the early '90s, late '90s, early 2000s when that came out. They had hits on that album, but more power to them there. But like I said, he wanted to make this last album political, and it was just not my cup of tea. More power to you if you liked it, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it more than once. All right,
No, I think
Brian.
So. Yeah, I guess I'll go.
Guilty pleasure.
Let's see. No. I only do one guilty pleasure.
Okay, I got you.
I'm gonna go back to some rock here, some really heavy rock, and I know you're not gonna like this one. It's actually, I'm not gonna go with that one yet. I'm gonna go back to grunge. How's that? I was really surprised at how much grunge I actually like, because I didn't really like grunge in the whole era where we were blaming grunge for killing hair metal. But
I was not a big fan of grunge back in the day. I called it whiny ass music.
Yeah, but I like, so like right now. I mean, I feel like "Down in a Hole" is probably one of my favorite songs. But Alice in Chains Dirt, it's a great album. I could listen to all day.
Like I said, and I told somebody, and I don't think this was on a podcast, but I was talking to somebody the other night about it, that I was not a fan, like Jim said, of grunge back when it happened, and mainly because I was like, you're killing my bands, you're killing the ones that I like, and in some, just like I said with Bon Jovi's album with the depressing stuff, in some ways that grunge stuff, when I was listening to it, and I was like, this is depressing. Some of this stuff just sounds depressing. But going back and listening to it on the album challenge, I do have to say Dirt was one of them that I had the harmonies that Cantrell and Lane Staley do are like eerie. And it's like nothing I've heard before, and I love it. I
don't know if they qualify as harmonies or not. I think it's more of a duet, but gosh, it's just those two together are just, sometimes you don't even realize who one or the other is, unless Lane Staley's like really belting something out. When they're in their sweet spot, they almost sound like the same person.
Yeah, I agree, and they work well together. It's just a shame Lane isn't around anymore, and no telling what he would have done.
Yeah,
if he'd still been around. All right. So I'm gonna get back into some '80s rock with this one, and this may be one that you guys didn't expect, but I was a big fan of their second album. I think it was their second album, and really, like I said, the whole reading the magazines, hearing the build up for this one, I was ready for it when it came out. I had to go to the record store to get it. Dawkins Back for the Attack. Leading off with one of the best lead-off songs, "Kiss of Death," that opening riff from George Lynch, and then looking at some of the other songs on the "Heaven Sent," and every band that got into that. I think after Theater of Pain, especially, every band in that era had a formula. Well, okay, we've got to have an upbeat song that we release first, then our second single is going to be a ballad, and everybody was doing power ballads. Heaven Sent was good, though. Don at the time had a great voice. Had the Dream Warrior song from
Nightmare on
Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Yeah, and So Many Tears, Burning Like a Flame, Standing in the Shadows. Just this was a 13-song album, which I loved it back in the day because you were getting more for your money then. 63 minutes of song, but just a shame that at the time this was their last studio album because they couldn't get along. I mean, between Don and George Lynch, they couldn't get along. They did a live album, and their last single before they broke up was called "Just Walk Away," which is a great song. But they had probably the hardest working man in show business playing in that band, and that's Jeff Pilson, who's in Foreigner now, and in like 40 other bands along the way. That's one that's on my bucket list to interview right there. It's Jeff Pilson. He's done so many great things. It just seems like a nice guy, but Dokken was on the verge of moving into another tier, the upper tier of those 80s rock bands, and then their egos just got in the way. But this was a great album, was Back for the Attack.
And they followed up with that Lynch Mob album George Lynch did anyway.
George Lynch did his own thing.
Not a bad album.
Yeah, I haven't listened to much of the Lynch Mob stuff. I listened to, I think, one album over there that was really good. But, yeah, it's just a shame they couldn't stick together. Because between this one and Under Lock and Key, I know some people go back a little bit later than that, but those two albums right there, Under Lock and Key and Back for the Attack, were just two great albums for me.
Another one of my favorites.
Yep. All right. Jim.
Yeah, I'm perusing the list.
Jim's been looking over there at his list trying to figure out what's next.
He's got 50. I'm running out already.
Yeah, I'm getting down to my last two.
All right. Well, keep me posted when we're getting ready to wrap it up, because I'm holding on to a couple that are vying for the one.
We'll probably do let's say we do three more.
Okay.
Have you got three more, Brian?
I'll find three more.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll bring that Lenny Kravitz one back.
Yeah, you get brownie points then.
I know.
So I already mentioned this artist once before, but I got to go with this one, just because not only does she on this album sing some of the songs that she'd already sung. It's a live album. Okay. But she also does a couple of covers that the originals were fantastic, and then to hear her do them live was also fantastic. And it's Pink, All I Know So Far Live. It includes some of her hits like Perfect.
Oh yeah.
It's got Just Like a Pill. Just Give Me a Reason. But what she also does on that album is Time After Time. She does her version of Bohemian Rhapsody and her version of We Are the Champions. So those three covers that she performs live are fantastic.
I agree with that. She does. Pink is like, she's just a badass. I don't care what anybody says. She's a badass.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Brian.
All right. I'm going to go back to some metal and go to Countdown to Extinction, Megadeth. That's the one I don't think you're going to like.
That's Symphony. That's Symphony on it, right?
It does. Symphony of Destruction, High Speed Dirt. Gosh, yeah. That's just guitar player's dream album. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was really, and I know I'll probably get bashed for this for some people. That was really the only Peace Sales, I got into that. Okay, that was okay. And this album was really one I got into more than Peace Sales, but couldn't really get into Megadeth that much, except for pretty much the hit songs. I'll put it that way.
You probably had that gripe with Metallica, though.
Oh yeah, I was pro Metallica. I remember that was all over the place back in the day. Dave Mustaine. Yeah. All right. I think I've got another one here. But I'm gonna go a little, and I talked about this album a little bit earlier. One of the cassettes I bought on my birthday about this. I'm gonna throw some New Edition in here. The self-titled New Edition album with you had just remember seeing Friday night videos. The only way I could watch videos back in the day. Seeing the Cool It Now video. And I was like, who are these guys? Because I was late to the party. Candy Girl had already come out. And didn't realize, is this the end? Was I out too? And I missed out on that. But This came out. It was on. I was a New Edition fan for life after this. Uh, they were. You talk about boy bands. They were a boy band from the '80s as well, R&B boy band. But uh, Cool It Now, Mr. Telephone Man. Come on, really. And then Lost in Love was a great ballad. That was another dance, a school dance song there. But these guys went on to do so many great things. Bobby Brown had a great career. Ralph Tresvant, he did some solo stuff. Johnny Gill, who wasn't in the band at the time. Then you had BBD, Belle Biv DeVoe comes out of this. But they were all so much better to me together. And had some problems with each other over the years, but I think they're still going. Some of them are still going on tour as New Edition again. But for me, the self-titled album will always be the best for me.
Yeah, I still have that on cassette tape.
Like, I remember getting that, and I was like, these guys are freaking awesome. But yeah, I had to throw that make sure I threw New Edition in. All right, Jim, you got 2 more left.
All right. So many to choose from.
We're gonna have to do a part 2 with Jim.
Yeah, I gotta feel like I gotta go into the 2010s with Paramore. I love this album, and funny story, because there was another one on my list that I was going to mention that I got introduced to when I went to see Paramore perform in Jersey several years ago. They were opening up for Fall Out Boy. I was going to see Paramore. I got introduced to Fall Out Boy going to see Paramore because I just stayed around for the headliner, and I was like, oh, okay, this band's actually kind of cool. So yeah, Paramore. I mean, it's just stacked.
Is this the one? I can't remember the song she did.
That's why I was looking for the list real quick. So,
what was that girl's name?
Not look, Haley Williams.
Yeah. And I've got the song in my head, and I cannot think of the name of it that I remember.
Yeah, this is showing up as a different, so I probably picked the wrong Paramore album. But yeah, Still Into You is one of the songs. Nope, Still Into You's on that album. So yeah, I like all of their earlier stuff, but had to get Paramore on there.
Okay.
Well, and the record label really tried to get her to be a pop princess, and she's like, no, I really want to front a rock band, and she stuck to her gun. So loved it.
I'm sitting here trying to find a song that I like so much from them. I'll find it. All right, Brian, go ahead with yours. Ain't It Fun? That was it.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna go to a band that, God, they should have never broke up, but you know how bands have problems. Candlebox, the self-titled, with Far Behind, Cover Me, Mother's Dream, Rain, You, just another awesome album.
I have not listened to Candlebox since probably back when I was a teenager, and one of my friends had it, and I remember it. I was like, "Who the heck is Candlebox?" But they were pretty good. I remember that. I've got to put that on my list too. I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan.
Yeah, no, one of my favorites. I've seen them live, and then years later, I've got a couple of friends that kind of had a little connection. How they they famously were fighting in the studio, and the
Oh
musicians
yeah.
were like like rotating through there. But apparently, somebody I know did some of the studio work for them.
Okay.
Yeah, on guitar.
Yeah, speaking of Candlebox, I just saw the other day that, or a few weeks, actually just the other day, that the drummer got tackled by the Deads at a show so that Mia Morris could come out and play drums for that, or play drums at a show. And I got to see Mia play briefly at Song Suffragette this week.
Wow.
And she's a talented young lady. I mean, she's a loop artist and she's a multi-instrumentalist. And
Yeah.
I was blown away.
Definitely. Yeah, I've definitely got to. I'm glad you brought that up, Brian, because I haven't listened to them in a while. I gotta check them out again. All right. So my second to last is a classic album, Back into Rock, 70s. I think it came out in 78. The self-titled Van Halen album. I mean, to start off with that classic crunch of Running with the Devil, Eruption, You Really Got Me, then Jamie's Crying, Atomic Punk, Ice Cream Man. This was, you knew when you heard this band the first time they were going to be special. I mean, not just, and people always ask me, said, are you a Van Halen or are you a Van Hagar? I'm about 50-50 there. I like both of them. I don't side with either one because each one of them with Roth, like with Roth, they had a different identity, it seemed like, and they adapted to that mid 80s to late 80s sound with Hagar. Can you imagine David Lee Roth singing Love Walks In? It wouldn't happen. I mean, it wouldn't work. But yeah, this album, and I got into this after 1984 came out. I became a Van Halen. Well, 51, not 5150, but Diver Down is when I started listening to Van Halen, and then went back and listened to some of the back stuff. And I always heard Jamie's Crying and Running with the Devil, but then to hear Eruption and then the cover, the Kinks cover, You Really Got Me. You could tell Van Halen was going to be something special. But and sitting here thinking, I like this album, and 5150 would be right there with it. But another album of Van Halen's that I love, and y'all probably gonna think I'm crazy for this, is Balance. Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do. I Can't Stop Loving You. There's so many. I think he does 316 on there, the instrumental. But so many good songs on that one. And that was probably, to me, the last good Van Halen album. After that, just started going downhill. 3 was not good. I'm sorry, Gary Sharon. You got an incredible voice, but it didn't fit with Van Halen. All right. So the last one for Jim.
All right.
Wait to hear this one.
We're going to go way, way back again because I don't think any Desert Island album list is complete without The Who, Who's Next from 1971. Got probably the greatest opening song and greatest closing song in album history right there. Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again. It's also got Bargain. I mean, just going back and reacquainting myself with that just to make sure that I was remembering the correct album. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yes.
Is Baba O'Reilly the one that always gets played before? Is that one ever gets played for that TV show, CSI or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Won't Get Fooled Again. I know Kiss always uses that before they come out, before they really turn the lights off. I know that. So yeah. Big. I guess they were big influence on Kiss. So The Who. We didn't have The Who up here. All right. Last one for you, Brian.
Last one for me, I'm gonna have to go with. Gosh, I'm so torn. I'm gonna go back to country though. I'm gonna go with Chris Stapleton, Starting Over. Definitely a mood album. I feel like almost everything Chris Stapleton does is a little depressing, but it's good stuff if you're in the mood for it.
Yeah, Chris Stapleton. I mean, like you talked about incredible songwriters. That's another one right there. He can come up with some great stuff. I just listened to an album of his that I hadn't listened to the other day, and my daughter actually, she's got, and I can't remember the name of the band he was in before he went on his own, but she's got one of them, and there's some pretty good. It's grown on me. The first time I heard it, I was like, who is this? And she said, well, this is Chris Stapleton, the band he was in before he went on his own. And it's grown on me over a few months, but everybody will talk about Chris Stapleton's. That's going to be another legendary national anthem to what he did at the Super Bowl. I mean, if you're going to say, some of these people out there were saying, oh, he butchered that. You're crazy. This guy's got an incredible voice. All right, so my last one, we're gonna go stay country. This is one I added at the last minute because my list was up, but I had to go to look and scurry and real quick. But and this is back in the day they were hot, and this has come out in 1999, country, and they were known as the Dixie Chicks back then. Fly, Cowboy, Take Me Away. Of course, everybody loved Goodbye Earl. We talked about that a little bit earlier.
Andy's favorite stabby song.
Yeah, Ready to Run. But there were, like I said, Sucker for a Ballad and Without You is one of the best, one of the best country ballads that I heard. The harmonies they do in that song are incredible. The video is pretty great, but my daughter and my wife are big Chicks fan. My daughter actually, I think this was her first concert. Well, no, her second concert. She went to see them in nearby here, and she was just talking about it. Came home and said it was the best night of my life, Daddy. Best night of my life. And I was like, that's pretty great. But, this album was start to finish, hit after hit for me. And I like this a little bit better than Wide Open Spaces. And, all the controversy that happened between Natalie and the political comments, put that to the side. These girls make some great music. And I like a lot of their later stuff. And I cannot remember the name of that song that we listened to. Hold on, maybe I can find it. It's not on that. Anyway, but yeah, that's going to be my last one there. So we went through 16 apiece. So that's 48 albums.
And some honorable
mentions. Some honorable mentions. Asterisks.
We got everything from Metallica to Eazy-E to Jimi Hendrix to Tesla to Debbie Gibson. I mean, we're all over the place. We can't say if we're trapped on that desert island for a while that we won't have a wide variety of music. We may not have much food, but we're going to have a wide variety of music to listen to. So thank you guys. I mean, we've been on here for 2 hours. I know you guys are probably. I think all our. Well, we got one. Somebody's sitting in here listening. I think Annie's give up. Annie probably has already.
Annie gave up on us.
Yeah, she probably gave up on us. But anyway, thank you guys for coming on. Brian, as always, 2-timer now. Sorry, Annie. And Jim, it was so nice to meet you, bud, and to get to talk to you. We'll definitely have. We'll have to come up with a. Need to come up with a round table discussion. Maybe we'll have different topics to talk about and pick each other's brain on. So
I want to take Jim out to do karaoke now too.
Yeah, I want to hear. I want to hear some of
Yeah,
the.
you know what though? I feel like you guys would have been in for a much better show had we done that in the '90s when I could still hit some of those really high notes.
Is there? And I'm going to ask Nicole if she's out there listening. Is there any video of this? Can you get video next time he does karaoke so we can?
Well, you know, I have wondered, and I'll have to see if my uncle or my cousin might have it. But my cousin at her bridal shower, I did "Welcome to the Jungle" during the karaoke.
Oh,
and it was a standing ovation. I was doing the Davy Jones dance. I was leaning back. I was belting it out, and that's when I could hit the high note. That was back in the '90s.
Nicole, I know you're still listening because I saw you just comment. Nicole's comment was, "Ha ha ha ha." If it's out there, Nicole, you got to hook us up. You got to hook us up.
Wait, did you have him with them or at him?
Well, and you know, a little fun fact, you know, because you know, my tag of everything that I've done at the bottom, you know.
Yeah.
But there was a point in life even where I had to choose between going in the Marine Corps or a group of friends kept asking me to be the lead singer of their rock and metal band. So there was a point in my life where I had considered. I mean, like I said, I could belt out "Never Let You Go" by was Steelheart. Yeah, I could hit that note back in the day. Yeah,
dude. Geez,
yeah,
that's some out of this world stuff right there. To try to hit that guy.
I know.
And that guy can still do it. You know that?
That's insane.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody's podcast the other day. They were talking about, I think it was Potter Than Hell podcast, and they were talking about that guy was still out there playing and could still hit that note. I'm like, holy crap!
That's insane.
Just glancing through, because I was glancing through a while ago when we said 3 more, and I said I only got 2 more. Just glancing through some stuff. But you know, if we were doing like a greatest hits, Hall & Oates would definitely have been one that I probably would have to put up here because I love some Hall & Oates. We did the Eagles.
Yeah, I would have had the Ultimate Queen on there.
Queen, yeah, I could see that.
Journey, greatest hits.
Journey was actually Elton John would be another one. Elvis, my mom was a huge Elvis fan, so I was listening to Elvis every Saturday while she cleaned the house.
Yeah, I had my buddy Michael. He texted me when he saw that I was going to be on here tonight, and he said, something about Elvis. He's like, if your desert albums don't include From Elvis in Memphis, your list is flawed.
I was just looking the other. I think I posted it, but I think in 1977 it came out, the Moody Blue album, and I just remember that because you know every vinyl now that comes out is like a paint color scheme splattered or something like that. That Moody Blue album was blue back in the day, and I don't remember seeing another album that was colored like that. I'm sure there was some, but when my mom got it, and she was like, she had to get on me several times. Don't take that album out and put your hands all over it. I was like, I'm just looking at it. But yeah, George Strait. I could have put the Pure Country soundtrack up here. That was, you know, I remember that's what made me. I was late to the George Strait thing, like I said, but watching that movie.
You know, when we start even talking about movie soundtracks, then we got to start talking about Forrest Gump.
That could be a whole other show. Holy
Highlander and
another show.
Dune, and you know, I have on my list. I didn't mention it tonight. Is, you know, I think it's understood Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Oh yeah.
Was fantastic, but 3 of the studio musicians that played on that album were also members of Toto.
Yeah, Steve Lukather was one of them. I remember that. I didn't know the other 2.
Yeah.
Who were they, Jim?
You asked me too fast. I just heard this the other night when we were doing trivia too.
This is one of the members of Toto played on Annie's album too. Buddy
yeah?
Hyatt. Yeah.
Let me look that up real quick.
I'm just glancing through here. The Grease soundtrack would be a soundtrack. It would be good.
Oh yeah.
Nightmare. Dream Warriors. Got to have the Dokken on there.
Yeah.
The Terminator one.
What, with Guns N' Roses?
Terminators. Terminator 2 or 3, one of them.
It's 2. That was one with Guns N' Roses was 2.
Yeah.
Jeez. I think I picked pretty much. Oh. Kenny Chesney, I should have put on here. Kenny Rogers' greatest hits. We could have cheated and got that. But yeah. So there's so many, I could have.
Yeah, Steve Porcaro, Steve Lukather, and where's the other one? I can't. What's that?
Annie's back. That's what we were wondering about her, and then she said, "What kind of trouble y'all getting in?"
No,
and then
I heard the dogs were going a little crazy. I think she took
2.5 hours of trouble. And then so but yeah, we'll definitely have to come up with some ideas for our next year. Maybe soundtracks would be the thing to do next time if y'all are up for that.
Yeah, we came up with some pretty obscure a while back. We came up with some pretty obscure albums that had connections to other artists too. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was cool. You think about, talking about Thriller though. I put a clip up the other day and I forgot about it. I saw it. I was amazed on the Jacksons when they did that Victory tour, and Eddie Van Halen it was coming through town and got on stage with him on that Victory tour, played the guitar. So Michael Jackson did Beat It that night and did the guitar solo. And I was like, phew. And did you know, Jim, being the Weird Al fan that you are, on Eat It, who did the guitar solo? Do you know? Trivia. You want some trivia here?
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's been many, many years.
Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo himself, Rick Derringer.
Oh, okay.
And he did the Hulk Hogan song too. But
he Weird Al appears in the Weezer cover of was it Africa?
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't think I would have been surprised if Weird Al did that solo. I mean, he's a pretty good musician himself.
Oh yeah.
He wanted it because we talked about this in the top 10. Brad was real knowledgeable. He said he wanted it as close to Eddie Van Halen solo as he could possibly get. And the first person that popped in my mind, because I didn't know it at the time, was Steve Lukather. Because I just got it mixed up where he did play on the Thriller album, but Rick Derringer definitely makes sense there because Rick Derringer I think was also producing the albums as well. All right, any last words, guys, before we get out of here? Next time, Brian. Yeah, thank y'all for coming on. Next time, Brian, we're going to have to update our bottom line here to make us look as good as Jim down here.
I got to type a resume out now.
I don't know what I'll have to come up with.
Well, maybe I'll just truncate mine into a Bitly or something next time.
So we can try to match it next time.
Yeah,
we'll come up with something. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's been 2.5 hours. I know Annie and Nicole have enjoyed watching us, making sure we stayed out of trouble. But guys, that's going to do it for our Desert Island albums list. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you next time on The Fly.
Good night.